Thanks for joining us and welcome back to the Watchman on the Wall podcast. Periodically, we'll bring you true stories of angelic encounters, heavenly visitations, near-death experiences, as well as modern-day prophecies that are relevant to us today. When we come back, we'll begin our next episode. Hello and welcome back to the Watchman on the Wall podcast. Today we're going to hear from Terry Sacka from Cornerstone Asset Metals. He has a vast knowledge of the economy and the world as we know it, and I think you'll be surprised by some of the things he's going to talk about today. He's interviewed by Stan Johnson of the Prophecy Club, and I think you're going to find this podcast very educational. So here now is Terry Sacka in his recent interview on the Prophecy Club talking about the new multipolar world we're about to enter.
Welcome to the Prophecy Club. I've got Terry Sacka on and we're going to be interviewing him. The topic today is the new multipolar world. And that means basically he's going to tell you the dollar's about gone. So who's Terry Sacka? Well, he's a good friend of mine. I love this guy. He's a good guy, good Christian, prophecy student, reads his King James Bible, 15 years as an accredited asset metal management specialist, involved in commodities now for over 10 years, helps thousands of clients to protect and preserve their assets. And, the thing of it is these days, how do we protect it? How do we protect that asset? Because with the dollar about to go bye-bye, what do we do? Well, he's about to tell you, and I've already heard several sources say, that people right now are scrambling. They are buying gold and silver in mass, and people are jumping out of the dollar as fast as they possibly can. So, Terry Sacka, welcome back to the Prophecy Club, my brother.
Hey, Stan. Good to be here. Thank you.
Okay, the mic's yours, sir.
Well, this is interesting time, Stan, because, I want to caveat this before we get going that, we're talking about this multipolar world or the dollar collapse. And, I'll contend that the dollar, is still really strong. It's still used in a lot of transactions financially. But what I think just took place here, which I think is really important, I'm going to caveat this just a little bit. I think the West made a mistake. I think they miscalculated just a little bit here. Because, and I'm going to go down the rabbit hole of this, but this was all set up. We did not have to do this. We did not have to be in the position that we're in right now. We actually, out of that pandemic, we actually started booming the economy globally. And then all of a sudden we started, which was manufactured, we started having supply chain problems, shipping problems. And then conveniently, as soon as Mr. Biden gets in, we start going to war. Now, I'm not going to get too deep on all of that, but I will say that in 2014, Obama and Biden was part of the revolution in Ukraine. They overthrew the duly elected president there. And ever since 2014, our special agencies, you could say, have been placing neo-Nazis in Ukraine since then. And of course, this is what led to where we are today. I believe during President Trump's time, there was peace because Trump was very strong. He made it clear NATO would not expand. That was the line since the Soviet Union. The West always said, we will not go into the East any further. And the Ukrainian border to Russia was the red line in the sand. And I say red line, meaning almost nuclear red line, meaning Russia will not tolerate. So here Biden gets in, immediately they start kicking up the rhetoric about NATO. They start kicking up the rhetoric about putting missiles and tanks and arming the NATO or the Ukrainian army. And understand, the Ukrainian army was filled with neo-Nazis. Now, I don't know if America remembers Nazis, but these are very evil people, rapists, torturers. I mean, Nazis are not good people. That's who the Ukrainian military is and the Ukrainian parliament. Now, our media doesn't tell us this, and the reason I want to say that is because they're trying to make it like Russia's this bad guy, or Putin's this bad guy and he's insane. And I'm not here debating Putin. I'm just merely saying, if we go back to World War II, who invaded Russia and killed millions of people? It was the Germans. Well, the Nazis, right? And before that, it was Napoleon. So the West has always been trying to get the resources of Russia. Russia is so vast in wealth when it comes to natural resources, not just gas, natural gas, but oil, rare earth minerals, and we can go on and on. But the West has always been antagonizing that. So from some extent, I don't really blame Russia for doing the Soviet Union style they did back in the day, because they were just protecting their borders. They just got invaded by the Germans and they were protecting borders. Now, I'm not saying they went about it the right way. They did collapse in the 80s when the Berlin Wall fell, and it's kind of all come to this point. Ukraine is a line in the sand, though. It borders Russia. It puts missiles and military right there near Moscow. He was not going to do it. So here we go. We start pushing the narrative. Putin puts the buildup there saying it's not going to happen. He even says, please, let's negotiate. Just give me guarantee we won't have NATO. Give me guarantee you won't put military bases and missiles and tanks in Ukraine, and everything will be good. We will have peace. I contend if we didn't start this, and I say we in the West, especially the United States, if we did not do this, we would have tremendous prosperity today globally. For whatever reason, I don't know why, they wanted this war, they wanted this catastrophe. And the part that bothers me, because I'm an Army brother American, but the part that bothers me is we are harming not just the people of Ukraine, the people of the world with this inflation and now this economic disaster. But why did we do that? That's the part that is the big caveat here, is why? Because here we're flying B-52 bombers along the border in Poland, and here we're arming them and doing this. Russia just merely said, okay, enough's enough, we're going in. I actually don't really blame them. I think it's a travesty. But why did we in the West do this? Now, I contend we did it because our dollar system, our financial system was on the verge of collapse. We are done in the West in this cycle of currency. The unipolar world we've been living in is a singular world where the dollar was the dominant reserve currency. We controlled people, we influenced people, we blackmailed people. And I don't want to hear anything about the atrocities that the Russians are doing right now, because look at the atrocities on the people we did in Syria and in Libya and Iraq and Afghanistan. I get it. So don't think we're all this nice guy here in the West. We're starting this. The question was why? And it comes down to my contention is they knew the financial system was coming to the end. So they go in and put these heavy sanctions on Russia. I really believe they thought this was going to torque them down. This was going to break them. Probably similar to how we did the Soviet Union back in 1989 when we got the Berlin Wall to collapse. I think we torqued them. I believe, and I've been following this for years, that China and Russia have been waiting for this. They knew this was coming. That's why China has come out and said that the sanctions on Russia is illegal. They're backing them up. So we put sanctions on the Russian government, we put sanctions on energy, and we start stealing the wealth of individual citizens. What this has done, Stan, which is a mind blower, I believe it's a major miscalculation and a backfire. It has now caused a multipolar world. What I mean by that, when the world, all energy had to be bought in an American dollar. It was a unipolar world. Everyone needed dollars to buy gas, to buy oil. Now, since they put the sanctions on, Russia no longer will use dollars in energy, and they told Europe and all unfriendly countries, if you want our energy, if you want our commodities, if you want our goods, you pay in the ruble. They crashed the ruble when they first put sanctions on, thinking they would crush their currency. Completely backfired. The ruble's stronger now than it was before the invasion. And I don't even know if it was an invasion, except I would almost say it was a defensive mechanism. I don't blame them personally. I just don't. I think it's a travesty for the people. But we put those people at harm. We did by instigating this. And I just don't know why we're instigating, except that we're in a panic financially. He's just doing what I would have done if I were Russia because of history. I would defend my border too. Here we are. Now he's saying the ruble, you pay in the ruble, gold, or now the ruble itself is gold-backed, commodity-backed. Think about that. We were a unipolar world of the dollar. Now, since the sanctions, the world has realized, hey, they're now putting sanctions and taking hundreds of billions of reserve dollars that the Russians had. Are we safe anymore? Can we trust America now because they'll just take our money and take our citizens' wealth when the citizens have nothing to do with it? It's created a massive amount of mistrust. Now the rest of the East, which you have to remember, is about 2/3 of the world's population. They're now looking and saying, you know, if I'm going to have to invest or buy my energy, I think I'd rather pay in a currency that is backed by commodities, which is real money, energy, oil, gas, rare earth minerals, fertilizer to grow our food. I would rather pay in a currency backed by commodity, which all through history always was real money, than a paper US dollar that is printed into the trillion stratosphere that's not backed up by anything except the good faith and credit of the United States, which doesn't look very good faith and credit considering we can just arbitrarily steal the wealth of private citizens and a nation. Now, don't get me wrong. I don't like this. I think it's horrible. I think it's horrible that they had to invade Ukraine, but I do believe it was forced. If you saw the real narrative, what was going on, number one, the Nazis were unacceptable. And Russia made it clear, I'm going in to take care of the Nazis and I'm taking care of this military. I don't blame the guy, but why did we have to push that as the point? Because now we're in a multipolar world, and if you're going to invest, why wouldn't you, if I'm India, if I'm China and other nations in the East, if I'm Hungary, if there's other nations out there that are supporting Russia, they say, I would rather have a commodity-backed currency than a dollar bill that's printed into Bolivian, not backed up by anything except threats, bullying, and brute force. This is a problem. Now, I don't think it really goes down immediately. In all fairness, the dollar's still really strong. But if this multipolar world continues to play out, which I think these sanctions and this tactic has completely backfired on us, if we continue to push this and escalate this war, which we are escalating, there's no doubt about it. We continue to escalate it. I really believe we're going to see the dollar have influence, but maybe in the West, maybe the Europeans, maybe even some South Americans, not all, because some of them are going to China. We've just fractured the world. To some extent, I have to say, I think what Russia's doing is actually destroying globalism, destroying the one world order, if I have to really put it out there. I think they're destroying the narrative of a world dominating system. And they're showing the world, why are we trusting this United States over here when we can deal in currencies on our own backed by real assets like energy, fertilizer, rare earth minerals?
We'll be back with more of this fascinating topic right after this. Hello again, this is The Watchman. Please join us each week for an exciting and inspirational podcast dealing with angel encounters, heavenly visitations, near-death experiences, as well as modern-day prophecies that are relevant to us today. So tune in each week and share it with your friends. After all, they could use a little inspiration in their life too. That's the Watchman on the Wall podcast, and now you can find us on YouTube. We return now with more of Stan Johnson's interview with Terry Sacka.
So I see the East start going to these commodity-backed currencies. China's very clear on their side. Now remember, China's really crafty, so they'll act like they're our friend and Russia's friend at the same time. But they've made it very clear Russia is on their side, and India knows where their friends are too. And look at the amount of people we're talking about. So these sanctions are not good. When they did this, they showed the world that we're no longer safe. Our money is not safe. There's no more this international order of integrity. All of a sudden, if the United States arbitrarily wants to do something, they'll do it, and they'll take the private wealth. I mean, come on. We have gone so far as to cancel out, which cancel culture is ridiculous in this country anyway. It's so mentally ill. But we have gone to the point, we even canceled the opera singer because he was Russian. I mean, come on, seriously? These are people. These are citizens. Why are we doing that except they think they'll put pressure on the government? That's not going to happen. Russia is going to protect Russia from those people who have been invading them for decades, in hundreds of years, which is the West. So I don't blame them. I think it's a travesty, but why are we pushing the narrative? Why? We thought we would crush the ruble. It didn't work. Now, because they show that they're backing the ruble by gold and by commodities, it's a currency you want to hold. That's brilliant. But I contend they've been planning this. Because remember, this was a petrodollar world. We made a deal with Saudi Arabia in the 70s. We'll protect you militarily. You force everyone as leader of OPEC to buy all energy products in American dollars. Well, the Middle East, they're kind of old-fashioned in the sense where they're real big on friendship. And the United States has proven time and time again that we'll stab them in the back if we need to. And they're tired of it. So here they're having these issues. We're having now, look at our gasoline prices have doubled. So Mr. Biden calls Saudi Arabia, calls United Arab Emirates. They don't even take his phone call. When have we seen that in the last 40 years? Well, they will not take a president's phone call of the United States. How embarrassing. Because they know who the real friend is in Russia and China. They know. China's been investing heavily in Saudi Arabia. So the fact that they are now turning their backs on the U.S., I think is a very serious problem because the petrodollar is dead. Now, I'm not saying the dollar dies. The petrodollar is a big point, though, because the only reason America was America in its greatness, in its prosperity, all the countries in the world needed dollars to buy energy. Every country needed oil. So then they'd buy our bonds. They would store it in U.S. denominated asset. That just changed. Now the world sees that they don't need the dollar anymore, that they can go directly to the nations with the actual asset. And yet here in America, we're killing oil production. We're killing natural resource production. We're killing food production, which is really weird. Now, I'm using that lightly because I know it's done on purpose. America, we have to understand, whatever reason, there are those in the power elite in this nation that want this country and this Constitution down. And they want us to assimilate as a third world into the rest of the world. They just do. Whether you like to hear that or not, it's true. What happens with the petrodollar going down? If China, God forbid, China depegs from the dollar. You see, Russia was pegged to the dollar too, not anymore. Other nations were pegged to the dollar, not anymore. If Russia depegs from the dollar and goes rogue, it is over. And I contend they're going to do it soon. They're just really super smart and they buy their time. Now the petrodollar is done. If that time comes, the Chinese depeg, we are now looking at 2/3 of the world no longer caring about a dollar. Why would they want something inflated and printed with nothing backing it up because we have more debt than any nation in the history of the world, ever. Why would they want them? Here's what happens. This is how history works. We've printed trillions of dollars in currency notes. They're doing it again with this last budget. They just keep making money and printing currencies, and then spending it on things that aren't even producing. It's weird. Like they're just blowing out the system right now. What will end up happening? Dollars will start coming home. So all these dollars that are around the world in reserves, around the world in savings, if they start coming home because people no longer trust the dollar, that is the seventh stage of the collapsing of an empire, and the final stage, which is the lack of trust in a currency. Now, I'm not saying that's happening right now, but we are getting close. And if we keep escalating this war, not only will it come fiercely down our pipeline, those dollars coming back to America will flood this country with more currency, creating, if you think inflation's bad, you haven't seen it until you see hyperinflation. I mean, look at the cost of food. Right now, they're rationing food around the world. Spain is rationing. Germans are now increasing food prices 20 to 50%. Here in America, I hear people in California saying their grocery bills are doubling. Gasoline is $7, $8. We did this on purpose. This didn't just happen randomly. We forced it. We printed money we shouldn't have printed, gave it away for non-productive items, and then we went to war. And mind you, we went to war, all right. It may be proxy right now, but we are using these people, and it is an atrocious behavior, I believe. And at the end, do I want America to win? I would say, yeah, I guess. I live here, and I love my country. But why are we the ones causing the tragedy and then trying to make it somebody else's issue? Why are we starting this? Except that I believe they're taking it to, which this is a whole nother interview, Stan, because this is deep dive. They're taking us to a digital currency. And they want to take us to a digital currency, no cash, which America, we better say no. We better scream about that. Because if we go to digital currency the way they want to, which this is why I think they're doing all of this. We go to digital currency, it becomes programmable. Meaning if they don't like you, if you're Christian, if you're fat, if you talk too much, if you're not pro-government, if you're not pro-psychopathic like the Grammys or whatever else they're doing, then we will ding you. We will turn your money off. They can program who has money, who doesn't, when they can spend, when they can't. Can you imagine that chaos? Wait till we get into that on another interview, Stan, because it gets into why they'd mandated by 2026 kill switches in vehicles. Why they're trying to push for electric vehicles. That's nothing to do with the world and the lands and so forth. Electric vehicles are all about control. And so you're going to see it coming. But this is serious. It's chaos. We're causing it. And the why, I believe, is they want to take us to this one world order. And it's the East standing in the way of the one world order, which is shocking considering the Chinese are the communists and everything was peaceful up until this point. You got to remember, we were ready to boom economically, especially under President Trump. The world was going to boom, but it was going to be free, and they couldn't tolerate that. So forget the rigged election. And when there's no doubt there were civics that were, civic issues that were definitely wrong. And that's just the way it was then. I'm telling us, America, we better get ready because they are taking this down. I'm not so sure the one world order wins. But in the middle of this fight, as they escalate, we, the people, are going to experience unbelievable atrocity of inflation, lack of supply. Right now, there are three major indicators. For the last 50 years, these indicators have never been wrong. They've always picked a recession. We are now on the doorstep of a major recession in the United States. And it's just getting started. we haven't seen the food inflation yet, the food trouble. That's why I like what you're doing with the wheat and the bread. I'd tell you what, I'd be jumping on that if I were people, only because I'm just saying we better have food stashed aside. We better have our assets protected and preserved. Gold and silver is historical, and gold and silver through time has always been there to protect and preserve those who did it in these times. It's a crazy time, Stan, and being that we're in this multipolar world now that we pushed it, I'm not so sure we can back up. I think the Pandora box is open.
Yeah, I do too. Okay, so someone is watching. They have heard not Terry Sacka. They've heard Shane Warren say, he said the audible voice. I mean, we've talked about it. The audible voice of God said silver is going to skyrocket far more than gold. Mm-hmm. So the question is, everybody wants to know, so when is that likely going to happen? Because it certainly looks like it's very close.
Yeah, what it is it is being manipulated. And the silver is the bellwether of the Western financial system. So they use silver as its bellwether. So when silver runs, it will only run because the system has finally broken. Their Bank of America is in charge right now of what they call naked short positions. It's totally illegal, but of course they can do it because they're operating on behalf of the dollar. They keep the silver price suppressed, but here's the problem. The real physical is getting difficult to get.
That was another question.
Yes. And so as the physical gets difficult, there was a reason when Bank of America had to deliver 25 million ounces this last delivery date, that the U.S. Mint all of a sudden stopped producing silver eagles. The physical product is essential because silver isn't just money biblically, constitutionally, Article 1, Section 8. Silver is needed in everything. We couldn't talk on this computer without silver. Not just our bathroom mirrors, mind you, it's everything.
Computers.
The real physical is getting light.
All of the electronics. Okay, now.
Everything. And military equipment, electronics, solar equipment. Here's the kicker, electric vehicles. Take millions of ounces of silver, and they're not even, the world is going to find out what a true natural resource is all about. They are accumulating the physical. The people, the industries that need it, they know. But for we the people, it's probably better to get it now. Take it while it's being suppressed and cheaper. Because when this thing really goes, I will not be surprised to see silver $300, $400, $500 an ounce, if not more, because it's a true price discovery of a finite commodity that the whole world needs.
Okay, what's the price of silver right now?
Right now, the purchase is around 30, 31. American Eagles are upwards of 38. So it's really showing you that big premium. Because remember, what you see on the computer is a futures contract. It's paper. It's not the real price. In order to get your hand on real physical silver, you have to go through the process of refining and minting and insurance, security, delivery. That has a premium. Those premiums are pretty excessive right now, but I contend that's nothing compared to what's coming. I won't be surprised if the computer price says 40, you're paying 60, because that premium is going to be that expensive, because it's getting your hands on the product is the issue, especially in retirement accounts, IRAs, 401ks. You could put the physical silver in the vault in your IRA so simply. So instead of being tied into this paper stock market world, which can collapse at any moment,
Absolutely.
You're going to hold the real physical metal.
Okay, so they want to get a hold of you to get some gold or silver, or rhodium or palladium or some kind of precious metal like that. How do they do that?
Well, I would definitely give us a call, 888-747-3309. I would also go to the website, cornerstoneassetmetals.com, register for information. If anything, start the process of talking with one of our skilled dealers. We've been all together for so long. Most of us went to Bible school together. I mean, we're serious about being serious in the Lord, number one, because there's a mission here. Cornerstone was a mission given to us by God to get the people ready, and that's it. So I would be contacting us through phone or cornerstoneassetmetals.com, register, get with us, because getting with us is the beginning of the process. because you'll be surprised how difficult it is to get your money from where it is. Because main thing, I know, Stan, folks are more concerned, and I hear this from, and I have one lady, gosh, she probably placed 7 or 8 orders, and she's in her 70s, the dear sweet thing, and she goes, what else can I do? I said, well, I'd have some bread. I said, I'd have some food. I said, but at this point, if you have water, you have food, you protect your assets. I would start developing relationships in your community, and I would be seriously continuing to pray. I know I felt it too. Sometimes I felt like God's hand has lifted off this country with the nasty perversion that's running our culture. But remember, the Bible says we're in the world, but not of it. And we have our peace within us, not in our world around us. So as frustrating as it gets, we better maintain our relationship with the Lord in prayer. Know He is still there for us as the true believers, and stay focused there. Get your assets protected. Don't mess around. If we mess around with this, Stan, before you do it, it'll be too late, and that's what I don't want to see.
Hello again, this is The Watchman. Please join us on our new video channel called Encounters from Beyond the Veil. It's the same exciting content as our audio podcast, but in a shorter, but yet a video format. Also, please subscribe so you won't miss any of our episodes. That's Encounters from Beyond the Veil, exclusively found on YouTube. Well, thanks again for listening, and if you enjoyed this episode, please share it with your friends. Any comments or suggestions you may have, you can send to thewatchmanonthewall2020@gmail.com. We encourage you to subscribe so you'll always be notified of our future episodes. Well, thanks again, and we'll see you next time on the Watchman on the Wall podcast.